And it's just an imperative thing that we retain control of our own voices and the media, therefore. So I want to commend Beverly on, 25, 26, how many years? Oh, now you tell us. 35 years publishing the New Orleans Tribune. I'm Susan Hickman, the General Manager of WBOK. Thank you, Simeon, for having us.
I'm DC Paul. I'm part of the freshman class of Black Media in New Orleans. I've been working at WBOK as a staff member for 2 years now. I'm, like I said, the millennial voice on that station.
Thomas, I work for Susan Hickman.
All right, everybody? All right, very good. Listen, before we get started, do want everybody to be aware of the fact that we have a process for taking your questions. We're going to take questions from the audience as soon as our panelists present. To my right of the stage and to my left, there are two buckets, one on either side. Those buckets have index cards and pens, I believe, for you to write down your question and drop it in the index card, and then one of the moderators will read that question. So at any time that you feel, just fill out that index card if you have a question and drop it in there. So if we can begin our discussion, can someone, as our question topic is around WBOK, can someone give us a history of WBOK within our community?
WBOK is a heritage station. It's been around since 1948. It was a hip station back in the 50s and 60s. It was a station that African Americans listened to, so they were loyal to it. It from maybe the late 80s until right before Katrina, it was a Christian station. And then from 2007, they did go about it and it became a star.
Do I have anything to add to that about?
Let me just say it was the first African-American owned and the first all African-American talk radio in the city of New Orleans. And so that was a long time coming.
Yes, first black talk radio station.
So anything else about WBOK's past that anybody wants to add that is pertinent to this discussion? All right.
I think just like it is now, I mean, we started off because it was the only medium outlet like that for African Americans, whether it's gospel or highlighting events or giving a platform for especially things that were going on in the church and in the community. It's a different format today, but it's the same reason for its existence. So it kind of parallels what happens then. What happens right now, especially given we see what's happening with black journalists and black media throughout the country. You know, if you think journalism news is dying, then you look at the African American community or outlets for poor people or working class people, many of them are dead already. So the history mirrors what was and what is.
Can we, it was over some of what WBOK's history applies to maybe people of older generation sometimes. What can anyone talk specifically about what WBOK means to maybe the millennial generation?
Honestly, before I started WBOK, there was Miss Janae Pierre. She kind of spoke to these young people. I think since I've been aware of the station, they kept a young person who was connected in the community around, not just as a voice, but kind of as a resource. My show for the past 2 years has been an outlet for local artists in the city and for local young people to just have a conversation on a platform where not just young people are listening. So like, I know that the listening audience of WBOK skews a little bit older than millennials, but I do believe that those people are interested in what millennials are talking about. So it's a good way to get the millennial voice out to older generations.
So we must probably, go ahead, please.
I mean, from day one, when I started with the station, I mean, there's always a segment on young people. We have a group panel discussion, and then we have kids who are initiating stuff, who actually were just some teenagers who actually come on the show. So evidently, those young folk think even an old head like me, there's some value in being on the show and relating their message and their feelings. And then it's intentional. Our general manager has asked us to be intentional about highlighting those issues for young people. So, I mean, I've been doing that since I've been there. I don't even know how long I've been there, but I've been doing that since I've been there.
Our listenership really runs the gamut as well. We have people that love Oliver, we have people that love John Slade, who's been on these stations from we launched in 2007. And we also have college papers run with our college students get engaged, and they talk about what's going on in college campuses. I don't think it has to do with age, I think it has to do with content. And I think what's going on in the Black community is relevant at any age. So we attract the people from college students, high school students, all the way up to,
I did want to weigh in on the importance of the African American press, and more specifically, press that's owned by African Americans. One of my favorite idols is Ida B. Wells. If you don't know who she is, look her up.
Say that name again, please.
Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells had a newspaper, and her newspaper was bombed, but she was at the turn of the century, she told about the lynchings, she documented lynchings. In other words, if we don't tell our story, they will tell his story. We need to know what's going on in our community. Issues that are raised on WBOK are pertinent to the community. At the Tribune, which is still publishing, at the Louisiana Weekly. By the way, I do have an article in the Tribune, don't I? I think my Donna Brazil article should be running. Yeah. So Donna Brazil was in town recently. You will probably not see an article about her in the dominant press, but you will find it in the Tribune. The 504, I'm doing some work with them. So it's important that our issues are on the table. But more than just talk about our issues, the Black press has the uniqueness of being able not just to put the issues out there, but to spur activism, to make people get up and act on what they're hearing, to get involved in the community. So it's very critical if we lose that voice. And a lot of people don't like Minister George Farrakhan, but I'm going to have to quote him. If it were not for the African American press, there would not have been a Million Man March, because he was blacked out by the dominant press. It did not publish anything about the Million Man March, but he had a Million Man March. And so from the time that Frederick Douglass was writing and steering the North Star newspaper, which was one of the main organs of the abolition of slavery, till today, that's how critical our very lives depend on what is published and what is spoken in the African American media. That's how critical it is. I don't know where African American people would be without the African American press.
And that's good. Thank you. Does somebody else add to that? What is the importance and significance of the African American press and African American radio in general?
I mean, the importance is if you look at the news, especially these days, from CNN and Fox, in many cases down the local stations, it has nothing to do with the real issues. It's about sensationalism. It has nothing to do with real talk of the facts. Very few media outlets now do some background. You know, it's whatever the sexy topic is or whatever is trending. The one thing Susan has asked me to do is, if I say anything or do anything, make sure I have some facts to back it up. But let me say this. WBOK right now, especially given, unless somebody's lying to me about my ratings of the graphs that I've seen, I'm showing it isn't just about the African community. So when I walk off the elevator at Oshman, and an older white gentleman with his granddaughter says, "Hey, Albert Thomas, you're Albert Thomas, right?" He's, "Oh, man, you're taller than I thought you were." He said, "We appreciate listening to the show." He said, "Now, we don't agree with everything, but at least we have somebody to explain how the systems work, with some institutional knowledge where we can understand. We get most of the parish presidents that come on now. All of them want to come on. If they didn't think there was any value, they wouldn't be having their press people call to be on the show. The show's got people fired. Well, the governor has listened to a tape of somebody who said something, and they asked for copies of the tape. We have some political people who say they're always listening. They may not always be accountable to our community, but they're always listening. Several major issues, 2 major millages actually went down and were defeated. That would be in your pockets right now. If it weren't for WBOK taking the lead, having to explain those issues. You saw what happened to us with energy. Yeah. We asked for 4 things. Don't tear down the plant until you get your environmental certificates, right? Secondly, if you're going to earn 11% profit on the open market, have some of that go back to protecting the ratepayers. Thirdly, if the ratepayers are going to underwrite a $200 billion power generation plant, who from the African American community, the local community is going to participate in that? And then, fourthly, what is your commitment to renewables, or regeneration, or green or alternative energy use? Bam, we got a check that was canceled because of that. No one else in the media asked those questions. So I don't even think, if people are still questioning why we're viable and what it means to the community, then I think we're in trouble.
And I also wanted to say that the press, the African American press, is an accountability tool. We hold people accountable. That's what we do, whether they like it or not. We also are open to activism. I mean, you guys can call up all the organizations I've heard, and we will put your issue on. Now, you try that at one of the major news stations and see how far you get. Yeah, so we are an accountability tool. Let me just tell this quick story. Remember, Beverly, when they were building the aquarium for the Americas, and we were asking about African American participation in vendors and contractors and what share that they had in that. Initially, I don't think I was on the council.
What year was that?
What was that? About the early 90s, I'm pretty sure.
I was there from 94, 95 to...
Well, you weren't there when the aquarium for the Americas was being built. With our taxpayers' money, with the 35-year millage that they put on our backs. So as soon as they got the city council to agree to the 35-year millage, where they would take funds from the taxpayers to build the aquarium of the Americas, and initially they had 3 contracting groups. There were African American architects and there were African American engineers. As soon as they got the go-ahead to put the millage on the ballot, all of a sudden there was a reconfiguration of who were going to be the builders, who were going to be the engineers, and African Americans were no longer at the table. So we wrote an article. And what we did, the city council was predominantly African American, and they signed off on that. When we started asking the predominantly African American city council members what happened to the African American engineers and what happened to the African American architects, it was 2 weeks later, and they were back in. So that's the power of the African American press.
What I hear too is that WBOK, the radio station as a whole, is about truth telling, with non-biased truth telling. Or Mr. Oliver Thomas said, some people come on and been willing to tell the truth and got fired subsequently or consequently, and checks have been lost because of it. What allows WBOK as a radio station to be so bold in telling the truth? Yeah, what not being fearless in telling the truth.
Yeah, being fearless. I mean, if you don't listen to the best interests of our communities, that's what we're here for. We're here to be the voice of the communities, and sometimes that means being fearless and saying people don't want to hear.
Get that a little bit closer to your mouth and let them bring this whole in.
Saying people don't want to hear.
I think it's because we're not in anybody's pockets. Like, we were able to, we took a hit with the entity thing that they pulled a check from us, but I don't think anybody's voice or perspective was withdrawn. People kept saying, Oliver kept talking about everybody talked about who felt about it. So, I mean, it's just, it's that we hate so we can do without the big checks.
We can't do it without the big checks. We can't do it without the big checks. We need the community.
Come on, tell us about that.
We need African American. We need businesses in general to support this issue. There are a lot of businesses that
I mean, I think it's the mission, right? And, I mean, there was a void there, so it's not, look, guys, if we were thinking about money, right, or the checks are important, none of us would be there. CC worried about getting paid. She would have conformed a long time ago. Beverly was trying to get Harris money and the same type of sponsorship that Energy gives to other people. They give us $1, they give other folk $100,000. They wouldn't do what they do, you know. But there's also value in, you know, do we want to take care of our families? Absolutely. You know, do you want to be able to cash a check? Yeah. Do you want to know that if you say the wrong thing, or if you say the right thing, and the wrong people are listening, that, you know, they're going to call a threatening station, they're going to call a sponsor. I mean, we've had black businesses pull their sponsorship because we highlight the other businesses that do the same thing. That test, that standard doesn't happen for anybody else where they advertise. We've had political people call and say, hey man, you know, you said I shouldn't have voted for the bill that kills all the poor people. We're like, well, you shouldn't have. You know, well, I'm going to call my friend and tell him, stop advertising with you. That standard doesn't apply to anyone else. But, you know, our general manager and the team thinks it's necessary. But it's also necessary for us to be able to function. You know, and we function in spite of that. You know, and hopefully we'll get to the question where, at some point where I've learned to understand more being at WBOK about what the community doesn't have than even what we do.
I want to just piggyback on what I was saying. It is a labor of love. Reverend McKenna, 35 years in counting, I can remember that Winn-Dixie, the supermarket, which is closed, but is one on Chef Highway now, but Winn-Dixie had the audacity to tell Beverly McKenna that her readership was not their market. And in all of our communities, they were in all of our communities. So it is a labor of love, but I think that the African American press and the people that own it and the people that work at it do it because we know where we would be without it. We would be in the dark. Washington Post says what? Democracy dies in the darkness. We have to keep the voices out there. Not just about our issues, but the community in general.
See, that's important because if you think about what happened with the DA in St. Tammany, the sheriff in St. Tammany, well, guess whose station gave platform to those citizens groups from St. Tammany? White and black. They came to our show. They didn't go to WBL. They didn't go to whatever those other stations are. They didn't even go to mainstream media. They started their efforts to change what was happening in St. Tammany, 1639 Gentilly. Period.
And so the mission, so we all know the mission of WBOK is what clearly stated.
Our mission is to enhance perspectives and to be the voice of the Black community.
All right. Now, so the question at hand is, unless anybody want to add to that. All right. So the question at hand is, are we in danger of that mission changing in such a way that WBOK may no longer be the voice of the Black community?
Hopefully not. I don't have any answers right now. They're still vetting office. I hope that WBOK can continue to be the voice of the Black community. I hope that we can continue what we've been doing, continue our mission. I think that mission remains to be seen. I think David Ball wants to sell to a Black owner. I think his desire is to keep the mission strong and the station strong. I'm hopeful.
I mean, when are we not in danger? Right. So, I mean, it's not about a season of danger. I mean, you know, we live in I wrote a piece called Democracy by Subtraction several years ago. We live in an age now where democracy is carried out by eliminating people from and marginalizing people. people can do well and other people's misery. Hopefully these young folk in here will change that at some point when they realize you can make all the money in the world and help all the people in the world. Hopefully you guys will understand that it doesn't just have to be 1 or 2% to make a difference, that everybody can do well in a society where everybody should do well. But yeah, it's always danger there. I learned that we don't have, even our black folk who do well don't have real money. They don't have any money. I use me as an example all the time. I mean, other elected officials are folk that I went on vacation with. They came home to good jobs. There were people who had resources to set them up so that they were okay. And independent think tanks and people with certain ideology, they will fund multi-million-dollar organizations to get that point of view out there, point of view across. Look at a lot of the conservative, and in many cases, a lot of the progressive or liberal meetings that are out there that are funded with millions and millions of dollars because that propaganda, that message that they want to get out there is extremely important. So we don't have that here. And in many cases, our African-American business people, the ones who are well-intended, cannot afford to pluck off extra money so that an ideology or thought, or some independence is prominent. And in our political system, many of us don't realize who we need until we're in trouble. So until they need somebody to fight for them, they don't want to be on WBOK. Until they need somebody to want to question a contract, then they'll go. I have folks who come on my show who will beg us for help, and when you turn on the radio and the television, they didn't pay thousands of dollars of advertising to somebody else. But that's a function of what's valued, what's black and how black and brown is valued. Because they love me, but they don't love me and love us enough to invest their money in us.
And let me just say this. You've heard me talk about the African-American owned press, the African-American press, but really and truly, the issues that the African-American press and WBOK puts forth, the issues affect each and every one of the people in here. If you're not a billionaire, a gazillionaire, and you will hear an issue that affects you where you live, whether it's the energy issue, whether it's sewage and water board, whatever it is, whether it's the fight for 15, whether it's the transportation or lack thereof, you will find that we are all in the same boat. We may not have come here in the same boat, but we're all in the same boat now.
I mean, look, I was asked by a leading elected official to help explain the fair share movement. Right? Fair share is a movement right now. You have a tourism community right now that's doing better than it's ever been. The national average for successful tourism industry, hotel occupancy is about 61%. New Orleans is doing so well, it's in the high 70s, right? In the low 80s. You're talking about raking in more money. The convention center and tourism community is bringing anywhere from $18 to $23 billion in annual receipts just from the excess, right? The convention center is doing so well, it's sitting on $250 million and growing. So, I understood the whole lost penny. That penny wasn't lost. That penny has always been there. It was just made a decision not to give it back to the people of New Orleans. When the basin, under the convention center and under downtown, some of us, Doc, we remember in the 90s when the toilets were backing up in the Marriott and Sheraton, and those pipes were breaking under Portland and Canal Street, right? Well, guess what? That basin is part of the federal consent decree. Okay? So guess who's paying for that? With another rate increase coming in 2020. Guess on who? Not on the tourism industry, on the citizens of the city. Well, there's some of us who understand when we were thrown out of the governor's mansion. Because just at the foot of Canal and Pointers, the city was putting up $25.3 million of services. $25.3 million of services, and they were telling us take $3 million in casino support reimbursement. Well, hold on a second. If I'm putting up 20 fire, police, water, sewer, maintenance, and you're telling me be happy with a $6 million reimbursement, that we would kick out of the governor's mansion for that. So there's a history in this town, for this city, of underwriting state mandates in the tune of what was $45 to $55 million in criminal justice mandates. Every time they vote on something in the legislature, guess who has to pay for it? Criminal court, criminal justice system. You know, so I don't know why our elected officials don't know that, but it's important that somebody know that, especially during the best time. The projections in terms of tourism, convention, and occupancy up to 2026 and 2027. They're going to make enough money to take care of everybody in this city in the next few years. So, you know, we don't just talk about the boogeyman in the sky. We talk about what A leads to B leads to C leads to D. And that's what CC writes about, that's what I write about, that's what DC tries to help millennials understand, and that's what our general manager mandates, that you have some facts.
I want to know, DC, you have anything to add to that in terms of the millennial voice?
I think the general consensus is that a lot of millennials are uninformed, underinformed, ill-informed, all the adjectives for it. But I think it's not so much that we're uninformed, is that the interest is not as prominent in my generation as it is in Albert Thomas's. So my job is kind of to present information in a way that's a little more, I hate to say entertaining, but palatable for people who have a shorter attention span.
Also, give us a taste of that.
Millennials communicate differently. They like their information to be shorter, more concise, maybe with the punchlines and done. But it's good to have somebody like DC who can communicate with that generation, because they do receive information very differently.
A big part of my struggle at WBOK was how to move millennials away from digital platforms to AM talk radio. I've done a lot of I made Facebook Live and podcasting and just other different ways to catch a millennial where they are and then draw them into this platform. Just been my job for a couple years.
All right. Excellent. I want to remind everybody in the audience that you can ask questions by way of submitting an index card with your question on it. There's buckets both on the left side of the stage and the right side of the stage. Drop your question in there, and a runner will give it to one of our moderators so that questions can be asked during the Q&A time. Can we just talk about ownership of WBOK? What is the history of ownership at WBOK, and what is happening now for those who may not be aware of it?
Jane Bakewell Sr. bought WBOK in 2007. Before that, it was owned by Christian Broadcasting for 17 years before that. Right now, he is in the process of selling the station. He is vetting offers. So right now, I really, unfortunately, don't have any information. They're still working through the process. Yeah, they're still vetting offers and going through the whole selling process.
Well, at least we can take maybe some comfort in the fact that Danny Bakewell is a New Orleans native and he understands and should understand what's going on here.
He does. He wants to sell it to a new owner that wants to promote the mission and continue our work in the community. So that's a good thing. So that is part of what he's looking for when he's looking for a buyer. Yes, he also owns the LA Sentinel, which is the oldest newspaper in Western Mississippi.
So, the thing that we're hearing about Wendell Pierce isn't true? Or
I can't confirm or deny any of that, because I haven't been told by Mr. Bakewell or by Wendell Pierce or Troy. We haven't spoken to any of them. I've heard those names floating around. I do know that they submitted an offer. I don't know where they are in the process though.
So what could we do as a black community that looks to still come to WBOK and now whatever?
I think that WBOK will still be, I don't think that WBOK will be owned by anybody other than a black person, a black entity.
Well, that's good to know. And all of you pretty much feel the same way? Is there any cause for concern about the future on behalf of the citizens of New Orleans, about the future of WBOK?
I would encourage people to continue supporting WBOK, whether it's through sponsorship, advertising, or listenership, no matter who the owner is. But like Danny Bakewell looked me in my eye and told me that one of his highest priorities is to keep the station black-owned, to make sure the station continues to serve its purpose in the city, and to not have many big changes to the program.
You know, for the little bit that I do know, and, you know, I'm an on-air personality from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then I go to work. But it's a mission that we do there, and I happen to know a little bit about stuff, whether it's in the streets, industries. You know, I've got some pretty good sources. They're negotiators with a couple of interested parties right now. There were other interested parties who wanted to just buy the dial about this decision that they turned down. You know, money rules. You know, it's like this whole issue about gentrification. I just taped a special for Tegna at headquarters barbershop last Monday that dealt with gentrification. One of the things in free-flowing discussion was that how do you tell someone in the African American community who's never had any money not to sell you the $50,000 shotgun for $300,000? You know, so at the end of the day, we can be as altruistic as we want, but you know, capitalism rules. One of the things you guys could do to help whoever owns WBOK, whatever our mission is that there are several major entities in this community that have advertising budgets. They advertise on stations that don't have our audience. They advertise with media outlets that don't reach as many people as we reach. And when Harris has $1 million budget just to pay lobbyists and advertise, and they don't take out an ad with Jeff Thomas or with Evan McKenna, or they don't think enough of our listening audience to even say, hey, this is why this deal is good to educate our public. That's a slap in the face. You know, when Educate will give away $200,000 for the Roach Walk Across the Street Festival, you know, and then they'll tell us, if you don't say the right thing, we'll put a cancel your $20,000 check. That's not at us. You know, each of us are going to go about our lives. You may not have anyone who understands what young people are doing. You may not have someone like me who knows a little bit about it, so you may not have someone that's committed as Susan to what the message is, but those entities walk around and they act like they can do what they want, you know, and we continue to support them. So I think at some point, you guys are going to have to decide who you support, who you challenge to invest or reinvest in our community, and whether it's worth it or not.
Just to answer that question, and we're going to move on to questions from the audience. When Entergy did what it did to WBOK by taking back the $20,000 check, was there enough outrage from members of the community to speak up and to say that they disagree with that action?
No, yeah, but you know, outrage is one thing. It's like you walk up to somebody, right? You're this tall and they 7 foot. You tell them you mad. You're like, okay, you just mad. So what Entergy knew was that there's a different time politically, guys. I remember, and I wasn't here, but as I studied political history, right, whether you liked the people who used to be in office or not, there was a level of advocacy there. When Dutch Morial walked into a room, when Moon Landau walked into a room, there were certain interests, right? When Mark walked into a room, or when Sidney, or Jim Singleton, Dorothy Taylor walked into a room, they were leveraging for something of interest. You may not have agreed with interest, but you don't have that anymore. Most political people now, they walk, whether they're black, white, but they walk down the middle of the road. They're careful not to advocate for anything or anybody. And on my show, I've said this. Tell me who the elected official is who will give up their career Tell me who the one is who will give up their career for housing, for economic development, for the elderly. Well, you could go through a list of the past and you could attach one of those critical issues. Even for preservation, you knew Peggy Wilson was going to fight for historic preservation. No matter what you thought. That was a good thing because it gave you a mixture of people who had certain interests where they could compete and they could dialogue and they could debate so those interests would matter. You don't have that anymore. You walk over a group of elected officials and say, I'm for you, and I'm for you, and I'm for you. And each of them are for something totally different.
Let me just say this too, about what you're saying, Oliver. The people, some of these corporations you're talking about, are people that we pay for services to. I'm talking about NG, I'm talking about Cox, I'm talking about whomever the city, I'm talking about the city council. I'm talking about the city council. Because our tax dollars go there. We are paying their salary. They have community reinvestment dollars that they need to put back. They need to be advertised. They need to be advertised on WBOK. They need to have WBOK to be their official journal at some point. They got money.
The citizens of the city underwrote $250 million for energy recovery. You're looking at the person who sat before Congress and the Recovery Authority. Virginia Brule and members of the Navy administration were looking to bring another company in to compete with Entergy. I thought, in my wisdom at that time, that we got that caught up in court, it would have slowed down the recovery. Because you had to bring back certain zones. You had to make sure that the transmission lines were up and there was some force of public utility was flowing those communities. So instead of using it as an opportunity to bring something in, we petitioned the Recovery Authority, FEMA, and federal government to say, hey, hold on a second. Their shareholders were not going to invest, right? So they needed a cash infusion that came from the people in this community. They gave several commitments. They said they would begin to look at renewables, energy efficiency and weatherization programs, and how do you begin to take those transmission lines and start to place them. They said, well, I went on vacation. You had a turnover in city council. You didn't have anybody who understood or remembered those system agreements that happened up to that date. Period. Nobody who was willing to read those old documents, look at the history of the negotiations, and hold their feet to the fire. One of the biggest problems we have right now is the city council is the fiscal agent for the city. A couple of times a year, they have total control. I asked the council member a couple of years ago about a $140 million grant in their district, and they told me, oh, I don't have nothing to do with that. The mayor's going to control that. I said, what? Huh? $140 million in your district, and I was at least going to have a voice from September to December during the budget. Period. Or on land use issues. So, yeah.
No. The answer is that we did not get much support from our political leadership. There was no outrage from our political leadership. There was no outrage from the business community. We had outrage from the people, and the community supported us, but that was the extent of it.
Thank you. One question. So before we move on to our questions from the audience, many of us have been privy to the knowledge that Mr. Sherman Copeland may be overseeing or in partnership with one of the groups that are thinking about taking over ownership of WBOK. In your opinion, say it again, in your opinion, do you think that Mr. Sherman Copeland would be a good owner of WBOK?
I don't know Sherman Copeland very well. I don't know him. I do not know him to say that. I don't know what his plans for the station would be. I would have to speak with him to see what his goals and his plans and his aspirations were, his vision for the station was before I would answer that. I don't know him very well. I haven't met him personally. I would have to see.
All right. Anybody else want to chime in on your opinion? Yeah.
Well, what I know about Sherman Copeland is when he was at St. Augustine, his nickname was Weasel.
Yes, yes.
Drop the mic.
Go to jail and now stay home.
Enough said. Anybody else on your opinion?
Well, gee, man, I'm not going to disparage anybody. What I want is someone who's going to update the equipment, continue the message of accountability. And as much as it's an African-American station, the reason why the listening audience has expanded throughout the region is because it's demanded accountability for everyone. So people are seeing the value. But the mission, in terms of, we're unapologetically, advocate for the African community, people who are locked out or left out. You all determine who has value. Some people may say, I don't have any value, right? Because everybody has an opinion. I know elected officials that I work with who, at the end of the day, they ain't care nothing about black community, white community, blue community. It ain't my job to disparage them. It's my job to do what I do. But I just hope that if the station changes ownership, that the mission to uplift those people who've been locked out and left out, I know who I wanted to get the station. And that person is not, and those people are not in the bidding. Because it would have been the best opportunity for everybody in the city, white, black, young and old. But who's there and who's there. And at the end of the day, you would hope that mission and history, which I don't even want to say that word, TRUMP money. But I don't know if that's the way the world works today.
Is there still time for anybody else to get in on the bid?
Yes. If anybody has a bid, contact me and I can put you in contact with Mr. McLeod.
All right. Okay, we're going to get to our questions from the audience. And again, if you have any questions, drop them in the bucket, and a runner will get them up here. So we're going to take those at this time.
The first one says, given all outlets of true black news, media businesses are under attack or jeopardy of failing. Community Book Center has struggled to stay afloat. What can the community do?
To buy those books. Well, when it comes to WBOK, if you have a small business, support the media. Advertising is what makes the media work. Deborah McKenna's organization, the Tribune, the Weekly, Big 504, WBOK. You need to support them in any way you can. As far as the African American press is concerned, we need subscriptions. Subscribe to the paper. Read the paper. You'd be surprised. Read the paper and listen to WBOK and you will be informed. Otherwise, you're not going to be informed. You'll be in the dark. As I said, democracy dies in the darkness.
And support comes in a few different ways. For small businesses, we would appreciate advertising and sponsorship, but even just as a listening consumer of media and news, like turn on the radio dial, put on WBOK 12:30 a.m. Send our metrics of higher, and use that to entice other advertisers to buy time on our station. So just being an intentional listener.
Advertising, sponsorships, that's it's such a bigger question. The disparity study said that African Americans participate in 1% of the economy. New Orleans generates more money per capita, even through still with the FEMA and the tourism business industry, generates more money per capita than cities 5-6 times our size. New Orleans is a poor city, but it's not a broke city. A lot of money passes through this town. There's so many different factors, levels of intentionality, national public policy, where language is going to have to change from may to shall, where people are going to have to challenge the quotient and enriching decision with their lawyers and with their counsel. But it's, where that young girl may have to change her values and say, look, $95 eyelashes are not as important as is what she does, invest in our community. We have those young professionals in our community whose margins are real tight, but it's more important for them to pay $3,000 a month living downtown than it is to buy a big mama's house or their parents' house in the neighborhood that other people see value. There's a whole nother reimaging and reevaluation. The African American community is $1.3 trillion, the 11th largest community. But until we cease to be a consumer community, until that dollar starts to stay in our community at least almost a day, or whether it's dipped from 8 hours to 6 hours, it's still 2 all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. Still programmed in terms of folks' reaction. And you see Middle America is the same way. Middle America is dissipating now because they don't understand how tough it is. Middle America is dissipating now because the same principles that work on minority communities are working on working class rights right now. And that is value the dream outside that you may never get to more than the support inside your family, inside your neighborhood, and inside your community. So that's a deeper thing there, but it has to start somewhere because people are wasteful now, extremely wasteful, and the people who have the least waste the most.
I also wanted to say that each and every person has a voice, so call in to Oliver's show, call in to DC's show. Voice your opinion, share information that you have that we may not know about. Whether it's activities, I think a young lady mentioned that there's going to be a march on March 9th, Women's March or something or another. She said that should be shared. Write the letters to the editors. Call up, Deborah County and say, listen, I need you to look at this issue that we're having in my community, whether it's the Gordon Plaza residents or whether it's take them down or whomever it is. So each and every person has a voice. And the young people in Boston, when you go back home, remember, you have a voice. Let your voices be heard. I'm so proud of the Parkland students. I mean, they rose up and they got legislation passed on Capitol Hill. And each and every one of you guys, we're getting to be old. So you guys have to go out there and take over. But let your voices be heard, whether it's writing, whether it's calling in a talk show, whatever it is, communicate. Let your voices and your needs be heard.
She'd ask me to fill in for her. And then after a while, they say, hey, man, well, how about if you had your own show? And so I can tell you this much. So far, I've always felt like I had complete latitude. Like I was free to discuss the issues the way I wanted to discuss the issues. And as a result, I took it as a big responsibility. So, I used to have this older lady, Miss Ed, would send me books. So I started a book club called the Miss Ed Conscious Hour Book Club. And, and so, I try to keep a book in my hand because if you're going to be on the radio 5 days a week, 2 hours a day, then you got to have something to talk about. And then I have lively, honest discussions. And, I would like to think that it's been useful to the community. I try to take issues that some people have, maybe they might be afraid to discuss publicly. And I try to just do it in an honest way, an honest and open way. And, I want to thank Ms. Susan Henry and the rest of the WBOK staff for, giving me the room to do that. I hope that it continues. But the one thing I will say, and this, I can only speak for myself, the only way I would ever do something like that, because believe me, the station paid me money, but I definitely don't go there every day because for the paycheck. And so if anybody ever tries to say, well, you really can't talk about this, or if you say this, then you just won't see me on the radio anymore. So I'm on every day from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. It's called a Conscious Hour with Chuck Perkins. I also put all the shows on SoundCloud. And so you go to SoundCloud and just search the Conscious Hour, and a lot of those shows are there as well.
Thank you. Has anyone floated the idea of the radio station being sold to the employees to own cooperatively?
No,
The next question is, why don't we do pledges to WBOK the way NPR subsidiaries do, like $20 a month or so from viewers?
We're a non-profit station. Since we're a for-profit station, we can't accept donations. I wish we could do, call-a-thons and fundraising, but that's not how our business model is structured.
Thank you. The next question is, Martin Luther King obviously had a great and influential agent of change. Today, churches seem to have abandoned the new God to capitalism, not humanism. How can people find the same unity as they found under MLK?
No, the only thing I was going to say, I think sometimes when we look at things through a historical lens, we see someone like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and then we are under this false belief that all of the churches during Dr. King time somehow, behaved the way his church behaved. But then, if you go back there, there were always, churches who were interested in other things besides just saving souls and helping people to move forward. And the same could be said, in the 60s, the same could be said in the 1800s, and now, right? It's the same. And so I think we need to just focus on the people who are out doing the real work.
We just absolutely. I just did a show at Loyola last week for Black History with Dr. Mitchell's hit play, the other Black History. I play a detention room, where I play a detention room teacher who keeps getting fired because he's trying to teach kids facts about American history and African American contributions. And one of the lines in the script, he talks about maybe when will the youth today regain the spirit of the youth in the 60s? Well, you got a lot of youth that have that spirit. You have a lot of youth out there that are standing up. The problem isn't the youth not standing up. The problem is the people in power not standing up with the youth. Man, there are a lot of kids, man, that are putting it on the line, that are really fighting. But the status quo is so much stronger and so much institutionalized now than it was then. And then the other side of it is, in the community with people of color, you get comfortable with a foot in your butt, right? You wiggle around and you make it fit, right? So then you don't realize that you got to lash out and fight for your life until the foot is on your neck. So people are comfortable right now being uncomfortable. It's the same thing with the middle class right now. The middle class is just, make America great again. Make America great again. They don't even realize that the foot is easing out their butt, going on their neck. So in our community, we get really, really comfortable with oppression and with being suppressed. So the question is, at what point do people really kind of rise up? And it's inevitable. The reason why I wrote the piece called Democracy About Subtraction is it's inevitable. History says what's going to happen when fewer and fewer people control most of the resources. History says what's going to happen when there are criminal justice and public policy mandates that are heaped on the back of the people. History says what's going to happen when Bentham and Blackstone and the fight over legal rights and rule of law protests. When that comes to percent, history tells you what's going to happen. 17th century France, it's the Roman Empire. But the question is, who's out in front of that, right, to kind of head that off or bring people together? And I think there's a big question up there.
Thank you. The final question is, can we get a Black community organization instead of one man to buy the station?
Sure. That's always an option. If community members want to come together and pool their resources and put in an offer, that's definitely an option.
Black people don't have no money.
Louder,
We do
please.
not have money. That's what I have. No, that's what I see that now more than ever through this process. How much money we don't have in our community?
Rich,
How hard it is for us to
wealthy,
come up with
and working class are different things. Look, I tell a story. I tell a probably 5.5 of them are tied politically. So which means that given a political regime or one contract, it could determine their status of wealth. There was a real-time meeting at a bank downtown with one of those African Americans who probably has a couple $1 million in the bank. And he was trying to raise some money for a cause of his interest. And he was with his banker because he wanted to set up an account to try to get some folk to match it. So the banker was going to match it because that's where he kept most of his money. True story. So after the banker finished listening to him, Chuck, he said, I'm going to match you $150 for this cause. He said, but if you wanted to get $150,000 from people in the African American business community, he said, how many people could you go to? So he started counting on one hand. 1, 2, he said 1, 2, 3. He said 1, 2, 3. And he said the $150,000, if they lost it, they wouldn't care because it wouldn't matter. So he said, well, maybe you got maybe 5 that even if they donated $150,000, they wouldn't care. It'd be like $150. So the banker said, take a walk to the window. He walked into the window that was overlooking downtown. He said, if I wanted to get $150,000 from the white community in New Orleans, and they wouldn't care if they lost $150,000, the line would start down here, go down this street, around Canal, to the river and back. And that's just in my opinion.
Any further comment? Anybody else want to add? Jump on that? All right. Again, if you have any more questions, we're going to wrap up our question and answer session in just a moment. We're so pleased to have a lot of young people in the audience. Shout out to our friends from Boston that are here. We're so glad that you joined us. We believe and that it's important to, I know it's important to our panelists, important to Justice and Beyond, that we always give conversation about the impact of racism within our community, institutional racism. How did you all, WBOK, do your best to address the effects of institutional racism within our community and globally? Do you all address that as a topic?
I mean, it's such a complex topic. Like Chuck, just last week or the week before, did a whole series on W.B. Du Bois versus Washington. My bad. It's a very complex subject to dissect, and I think that we all do our best. I was on the radio 5 mornings a week. Chuck is on the radio 5 evenings out of the week. I think throughout the different programming, each of us, in our short time that we get on the air, try to dissect a piece of that issue. I think as a whole, WBOK addresses that issue on the air 24/7, quite honestly. You got to tune in to different programs at different times, different perspectives. Very complex issue.
So last week when D.C. Paul was talking about, actually there's a new biography out by about Frederick Douglass, and David Blight is the author. He's a historian at Yale, and I read the book, and then I called and asked him I wanted to interview him. But I realized when somebody spent 12 years writing a book that's 800 pages, when somebody called and say, hey, would you like to talk about this book? They're like, yeah, I'll do it. And then after that, so we read Du Bois, The Souls of Black Folks, and Up from Slavery by Booker T. Washington. And I told D.C. Paul that at the end of the week, he was going to I was going to give him a quiz. And now I see you would have failed the first round. I'm glad D.C. Paul. No, but yeah, it's the sort of thing that we get to do all the time. And to be honest with you, I say this on a radio station. I think when they asked me if I wanted to host this radio show, I think I was bringing some knowledge with me, but then having some listeners who are informed, who have knowledge as well, and are challenging me on certain things, it's definitely forced me to try to stay on top of it, right? And so you gotta read and put on your critical thinking hats and not be intellectually lazy. And so in many ways, I think it's been reciprocal. that I've gotten just as much from the callers and texters as it hopefully gotten to me.
I just want to share, the majority of my work is in print. I've done broadcast. I had a cable access show, Big Now Federal Holy Peace, that I produced for about 5 years before Katrina. But, of course, you wouldn't know this, but let me just share one thing that I learned in an interview about institutional racism and structural racism. And I learned this from Dr. Alvin Poussaint. I don't know how many people know who Dr. Poussaint is. Okay, Dr. Poussaint is Dr. Poussaint. I was able to interview him, and it may have been for one of the articles we did, Val. We did on racism and mental illness and the impact on the African American community. But he told me something so profound I never forgot it. He was over Harvard University's Department of Psychiatry. He is a psychiatrist. He was the guy that did all the consulting work for the Bill Cosby show when Bill Cosby had the show. So all of the issues we saw, came from him. But what he told me about racism was this. He said, people have a right to be racist. They do. They have a right to be racist. If they want to be racist, that's fine. He said, but when they begin to act on the racist ideology is when they become dangerous. And that's where we are today. We are seeing incidences of people acting out on their racism, whether it's cops gone wild, killing African American people, they're acting on racism. So once again, and I personally believe, and I think Dr. Poussaint has been working to try to have the Centers for Disease Control confirm racism as a mental illness. So I would just say that it really is. And for young people, stay away from it. For
Yes.
we all believe the same.
That's right.
I want to give you a chance, panelists. We're so grateful for you coming. Just take about 2 minutes, 1 to 2 minutes, to give any closing remarks that you may have that you want to leave our audience with tonight, please.
No matter who buys the station, whoever hands it goes in, just support the station, support its mission, and just support the station. Just no matter what, it doesn't matter who buys it. Just as long as it's doing good work in the community, do your best to support it. That's my point.
I'd like to echo what my boss Susan said. Even as a listener, you tune into WBOK 12:30 a.m. any time of the day. There's good programming, whether it's early morning with Oliver, evening with Chuck. I'm on Saturday nights from 7 to 9. And as Chuck mentioned earlier, we do get a lot from listeners who call in. So 504-260-9265, if you're ever listening, you want to chime in. I think pretty much everybody's show welcomes callers and more perspectives, and we would appreciate it. Oh, yeah. And for young people, if you're interested in listening online, WBOK1230am.com. There's a WBOK 1230 app available on iTunes, Android, and Google Play platforms. Many of our shows are podcasting on SoundCloud. Check out The Conscious Hour, The Misbelievers on iTunes podcast app. Check out the website. You'll see what other shows you can catch on other platforms. WBOK1230am.com.
DC Paul, we appreciate you being our millennial voice too, but I want to give a shout out to you too. I know you have a comedy show that you do. Is that correct?
I do. I'm a comedian. I do stand up and comedy acting as well. I'm not sure which show you're talking about. I host live shows at stand up comedy shows. I'm at the Jazz Market every Wednesday. It's not a comedy show. It's a live jam session with an amazing band and a very funny host. But then you can follow Who is DC Paul on any social network. Check out my radio stuff and my in-person things that I have going on.
All right. What we got?
I think Chuck and DC are right in that the most important thing is to listen to audience. And that's our football. I'm there, but I'm not there anymore. Its mission is more important than me. It's more important than any radio personality. And I've learned so much, whether it's Mr. Baptiste, or Larry, or Alvin, or James, or Kevin, or people who have called in with information that I can put and match with what I came back up. And they've been extremely critical in how I function in my life as a professional, and as a father, and excited for moving forward. So I've gotten so much more from the people than I can ever get from them. And the diversity was clear last week when Ms. Dotsey called. And Ms. Dotsey called in, and she was the first time calling. She said she listens to the show now. And she just wanted us to know that her and her family has always supported the Negro community. And she was extremely earnest, and I asked her, I said, Ms. Dotsey, please, when you use that word, think about your need. You know, say it's Negro, not Negro. And she said, well, that's just the way I was raised saying. Well, if that doesn't highlight the need for us to want to be more conscious and more understanding, that moment in the show did for me.
I just want to say that the African American Press, the WBOK, Tribune, Louisiana Weekly, Thing 504, so jump around me somewhere. I just want to say that we are in the vanguard of keeping the issues that affect the entire community on the table. So I think I had my interview with Donna Brazil, who's talking about democracy and the problems we're having. She was in town, she's from New Orleans. And then in the Louisiana Weekly, I did a piece on Central Congregational Church, which is battling to keep it, which has been taken over, and it was an African American church, and now some people took it over. So these are the kind of issues that are important. But once again, I can't emphasize enough to everybody who's in here who has, and I know a lot of activists are here, have issues, call up WBOK. Or you can reach me through Beverly. Call up Beverly, or the Weekly. Let us be able to help you be your voice. And I want to thank Justice and Beyond, because as a coalition, it is one of the loudest voices out there sticking up for civil and human rights. So thank you.
Mr. Chuck, final words?
Yeah, I was just saying, I do a lot of traveling, and I think sometimes, you could, you have access to something that's right here, and you can very easily take it for granted. But, I can't say that I've been to every city and listened to every talk show, but political talk show. But I'm gonna, I would probably think that they don't have a lot of political talk shows where people, are unfettered and they get to, express their honest opinion on something. And so, as long as we have something like that does exist in the city of New Orleans, then we should be thankful, and we should, if there's something we could do to ensure that it continues, we should probably see what that is and see if we can make it happen.
Thank you. Thank you. We are so grateful.